Now on BBC News, the latest business news from across the globe. Business Today.
Feeling the squeeze, UK prices continue to rise. They're driven by a jump in food costs. A shake-up at Target, a new boss takes the helm amid a slump in sales. But can he win back shoppers? And hundreds of thousands of gaming fans descend on Cologne as the world's largest video game event kicks off. We'll be there. Hello, welcome along. This is Business Today. I'm Ben Thompson. We're going to start with the latest on inflation here in the UK because prices continue to rise. The latest data shows that they were up by 3.8% in the year to July. That's a slight increase on the previous month. It's the highest level since January of 2024. Well, the inflation rate is in line with forecasts from the Bank of England, but it's still above their 2% target. Now, the bank cut interest rates this month, but persistent higher inflation could have an impact on any future interest rate cuts. Well, prices were driven up by higher food and fuel costs, as the BBC's cost of living correspondent Coletta Smith now reports.
The cost of everything we buy is on the up, so it's easy to feel in a spin. And families here have been noticing it most in different areas of life.
Recently our nursery fees went up, I think, 10% in April. So we're actually looking to move our son to a different nursery because the cost is too expensive, which means we'll have to drive him further away. So then we have our fuel bills and everything else. So I don't really see an improvement.
Big days out like this, it's usually a special occasion.
And does it feel like anything is getting cheaper at the moment?
No, I don't think so.
So this is Roman, so he's 10 months, lots of teeth for 10 months.
And while nothing feels cheap right now, buying food is particularly painful.
It's gone up so much, it's ridiculous. Like what used to cost us 2 years ago, a weekly shop of £100, you're looking at 150.
Petrol prices in July hit the highest point for 3 months, so drivers are really feeling it.
You can see the difference, and it takes a pinch all around after. That's where you have to sort of accommodate in other areas and just work around it.
Which all means it's harder work to stay afloat. If you spend more of your income on food, petrol, on rent or a mortgage, then they're the bills that are going up fastest right now. So your household inflation figure may be much higher than whatever the official statistics are showing at the moment. Here at the ice cream farm, they know that customers want to enjoy a day out with the kids without spending a fortune.
Every penny counts, and you can tell that. People might only come and visit us once over the summer, whereas they might have visited us twice. And I think just people are watching exactly what they're spending, and there's always a trade-off. It's this, or it might be that, and they want value for money. So we have to be really mindful of that as a business.
As well as higher staff costs, the ingredients here are getting more expensive. And down the road at Marsh House Farm, they know the reason why.
Every cost has gone up.
Without much rain in spring and early summer, the grass and feed these cows are usually eating just didn't grow enough.
So whatever we've got now is what we've got to work with, and unfortunately that will mean for the next 6 months that prices will have to stay quite high to help counteract that.
It's extra costs at each point in the chain, and customers are facing higher bills to cover it. Coletta Smith, BBC News in Cheshire.
Well, Tom Pugh is UK economist at the tax consultancy RSM. So what exactly does he think those figures tell us?
Inflation came in slightly higher than kind of we expected and the consensus expected in July, in line with the Bank of England's forecast. But a lot of that was driven by a really big increase in airfares, because this year when the ONS looked at the prices, it was just closer to the school holidays. I don't think that's particularly something to worry about. That will fall back. If we look at oil prices, they're already down 5 to 10% this month compared to last month. So that will help that fuel inflation that we were just talking about in the bit before. The bit that we're really getting quite worried about is that food price inflation. And that's because we know that food prices are going up. They're going to continue to go up through the rest of the year. That will drive inflation. But households, businesses, consumers are really focused on that food price inflation number. It makes a big difference to where people expect inflation to go in the next 6 months, year, etc. And that can have a big impact on how they plan. How, do employees bargain for higher wages? Do businesses set higher prices? Food inflation has a very big impact on that aspect of it.
So from the latest here in the UK, let's head stateside because Wall Street was off to a quiet start earlier. The market's pretty flat as investors take in a fresh round of earnings from big retailers. It's a big week for those retailers. Today, we heard from Target. It's named its new chief operating officer as Michael Fidelki. He'll be the next CEO. He'll take on the role in February as the retailer works to win back customers and investors after years of sluggish sales and falling market share. More on Target in a second, but remember today also all eyes on the Fed. We're waiting for those minutes from the central bank's July meeting. They'll give us any indication about what it's thinking about the direction of travel for the US economy right now. Let's talk to Michelle Fleury, who's standing by in New York. And Michelle, let's talk Target because we've discussed it's a big week for retailers and they are a bit of a bellwether, aren't they? They give us a sense of how consumers are feeling.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to remember here is that consumers are the backbone of the American economy, accounting for 2/3 of all economic activity. And so when you've got these big name retailers publishing their results, investors are kind of poring over the data to sort of get a sense of how American shoppers are feeling right now. Will they continue to spend? How are they weathering the current economic environment? Target, though, stands slightly apart. The reason for that is that if you look back over the last couple of months, the last couple of years, they've sort of struggled with falling sales. They've also retreated from their position when it comes to DEI. There were some controversies over the types of swimsuits they were selling a couple of years ago. They pulled them from shelves, and that kind of irked some of their customers. And so I think in recognition of some of the difficulties they're facing, even before tariffs started to kind of hit retailers, the company has been scrambling. And now the CEO, Brian Cornell, after 10 years is stepping down, and his replacement is an internal candidate, Michael Fidelki. But Wall Street's reaction so far has been pretty negative. Now, a bit earlier, I was speaking to a retail analyst, Neil Saunders from Global Data, and he kind of explained a bit of the big picture, how Target got here.
They had a fantastic run in the pandemic and its aftermath, and then they seemingly hit a wall. And I think one of the things that happened is they lost operational control. There were a lot of things that happened at Target that meant they weren't staffing stores properly. They weren't doing things like range refreshes enough. And that ultimately deterred the customer. And of course, we've come into a slightly softer period of customer demand, and they've really been found wanting over these past couple of years.
So going forward, then, they've now picked an insider. Do you think that was the right decision? Because Wall Street clearly has questions. The share price is down, just shy of 10% right now.
No, I don't think it was the right decision. I think you have to be fair, and Michael Fidelki is a good person. He's very talented, and he has to be given a fair crack of the whip. But Wall Street really wanted someone from the outside because a lot of Target's problems are internal groupthink. They've not been making the right decisions. And I think a lot of investors don't really have a lot of confidence in the board. I also think it was a huge mistake to keep the previous or current CEO, previous CEO come next year, Brian Cornell, in an executive chairman position. It's almost a reward for failure, and I don't think Wall Street is particularly happy about it.
And the share price down around 8% at the moment, Ben. But of course, the attention now turns to Walmart. The giant grocery store retailer reports its results before the opening bell on Thursday. And of course, it has been outspoken about the impact of tariffs. Historically, Walmart has had a tradition of sort of doing better than expected when it releases results. But again, we'll see what they have to say about the impact of tariffs on their business.
Yeah, we'll look out for that tomorrow. Michelle, good to talk to you. Thank you, Michelle Fleury there in New York. Now, hundreds of thousands of gaming fans flooding Cologne for Gamescom. It's the world's biggest video game event. Now, the opening night is live streaming. It's on YouTube with major titles like Call of Duty Black Ops 7 and World of Warcraft Midnight set to debut. But behind the hype, the industry is grappling with layoffs, rising costs and fierce competition. So, has it hit a point of maturity? Let's talk to Chris Hewish, who's the president of Xsolla and joins us now from that conference in Cologne. Chris, good to have you here, and give us a sense, if you will, about how important this event is for the entire industry.
So this is truly a premier event for the industry. As you mentioned, it is the largest in the world with over 1,500 exhibitors and over 300,000 attendees this year. And it really has become a global hub for all the things related to gaming.
But I sort of touched on it in the introduction there. I mean, there's a challenge for the industry amid a lot of layoffs and a lot of consolidation. You know, some questions about whether we have hit peak gaming. I mean, what's your assessment? You provide some of the payment facilities, don't you, within games?
You are correct. We do. We provide all of the things that a game company would need in order to go direct to consumer and take control of their business. And that direct to consumer statement is really where the industry is heading. And this represents a lot of opportunity for an industry that has gone through a rough patch. There are many people who are out of work, who are starting up new companies. There's been consolidation at the top, but there is also real opportunity now for a lot of these new companies and mid-sized companies to take control of their own business and connect directly with consumers. And this is being really driven by not only technology, but a lot of the things that are happening on the regulatory and legal side, such as the Digital Markets Act here in Europe.
I mean, a question about whether, you know, it's difficult to come up with anything new in gaming there. I describe, you know, 2 debuts, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, a sequel, a numerous sequel, World of Warcraft Midnight. I mean, it's true of the film industry as well. It's very difficult to come up with an original idea, isn't it?
It is difficult to come up with an original idea and bring that to market in a commercially viable way. But this is one of the beauties of the games industry. It is cyclical. We do have periods where you get a lack of creativity, but then inevitably that results in people leaving and starting new companies to pursue new ideas. And we are in a mode of time now where we're seeing a lot of independent studios that are starting up. We're starting to see funding flowing back into the industry, and we're starting to see a lot of new great ideas coming, not only from independent developers, but also from all around the world. One of the big titles that was revealed last night was a sequel to last year, or previous hit, Black Myth Wukong.
Chris, time is tight, but really good to talk to you. Enjoy that conference there in Cologne. Good to have you with us, Chris Hewish there. Thanks. More on those stories, bbc.com/business is where you will find it. But that is your business today this hour. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thousands of people have come here to the centre of Seoul this evening. They have come to celebrate the newly elected president, Lee Jae-myung.
He's been firing rubber bullets at the direction of the crowd, and it shows you just how volatile the situation is.
We're seeing scenes of destruction like this one across Mandalay, and the reality on the ground is there just aren't enough pairs of hands.
Given the scale of the attacks we've seen over the past 48 hours, it doesn't feel like we're in ceasefire territory.
There when the story breaks, BBC News.
Welcome back to Verified Live here on BBC News. Now, a member of the Irish language rap group Kneecap has been granted unconditional bail in order to appear for a third time at Westminster Magistrates Court in 5 weeks' time. Liam O'Haney, who performs under the stage name O'Hara, is accused of displaying a flag in support of Hezbollah at a gig in London in November last year and was charged with allegedly supporting a prescribed terror organisation. The 27-year-old denies the charge and claims the case is political. The case has now been adjourned until next month. Well, our arts correspondent David Sillito was outside of the court earlier today and joined me in the studio to talk me through what happened today.
Traffic stopping crowd on a very busy road in London. There are a lot of supporters there for Kneecap there in Mohara, one of the three members of a Irish hip-hop trio, Kneecap. This is all about performance at the Kentish Town Forum in November of last year. The allegation about a display of a Hezbollah flag, the Lebanese militia group, a prescribed terrorist organisation. And the charge that Mohara faced, Liam O'Haney, was that it was a breach of terror legislation. He denies it. In court today, it was essentially a long technical debate about when that charge was actually brought. Had it gone over the 6-month limit? Both sides 2 or 3 hours in court, and a decision at the end, well, it will be deferred until the 26th of September. So we wait to find out whether or not this case will continue at this next hearing.
David Sillito. Now, an Italian airport has been partially evacuated after a man set fire to a check-in desk. Video posted on social media shows chaotic scenes at Milan's airport as a fire rages at one of the desks while a man attacks digital screens before being detained. The Airports Association says a man has been arrested and the situation brought under control. Now, aid agencies in Somalia are raising the alarm over a dramatic surge in the outbreak of diphtheria across the country. There have been more than 1,600 cases and 87 deaths reported this year. Recent cuts in international aid have impacted the country's health systems, including routine immunisation. Authorities say the disease is now one of the most urgent and dangerous threats to public health in Somalia today. Fardoza Hanashi has this report.
This child is fighting for his life. Worried mothers bring in sick children, many thinking it is minor illness, but it's diphtheria, an infectious bacterial disease once thought to be under control is back with a vengeance.
When I brought my son here, he was very sick, had a fever. His throat was swollen. All along, I suspected other diseases, but not diphtheria.
At the Dimatino Hospital in Mogadishu, the hallways are crowded with patients coughing, feverish, and some struggling to breathe. All symptoms of the disease, which preventable with a vaccine. This time, it's not just children, even unvaccinated adults are falling ill from this highly contagious and deadly disease.
The number of diphtheria cases in the hospital is becoming overwhelming. These children are not being treated urgently, and by the time they get here, their condition is already severe.
Over 1,140 diphtheria cases have been recorded in just 56 days. Many of the sick are children who have never received a single vaccine. Aid agents warn that recent aid cuts have devastated Somalia's health system, affecting routine immunizations, access to medicines, and community outreach. Nearly a third of functioning health facilities have been forced to shut down.
Following the aid cuts around March, April, hundreds of health facilities have been closed functionally, even if they are there structurally, but they are not functioning anymore. So that is the biggest challenge, and our fear is we don't see any visibility, and it's likely to deteriorate, and we are probably heading into a much bigger disaster.
Somalia is already battered by climate shocks, conflict, and food insecurity. Yet now, it's being forced to manage a major health emergency with a healthcare system that's functioning at a fraction of its capacity.
The highest number of cases are among those who have never been vaccinated. We have started awareness campaigns, but we need more support.
Inside the few facilities still operating, health workers are overwhelmed and running out of supplies, uncertain if help will ever reach the sick and vulnerable. Fardosa Hanshi, BBC News.
Now, before we move on, I just want to take you back to Israel, show you the live pictures that are coming into us. We're seeing just a large gathering there at one of the kibbutzes, a protest of families of hostages calling for their return. Of course, Israel still to respond to that Qatari-Egyptian ceasefire proposal. Here on the programme, in about 25 minutes' time, we'll talk to a reservist, because Israel has called up 60,000 reservists. We'll talk to one reservist who's refusing to actually serve in Gaza. So that is coming up in 25 minutes' time here on BBC News.
There's something all around us that's having a big impact on our world. Concrete.
Concrete is the most produced material on the planet. We produce more than 30 billion tons of it every single year. And if you look at what concrete is made up of, it has cement, which is the glue that holds everything together. It has sand, gravel, and water, essentially.
Used as a building material for centuries, production of its crucial ingredient, cement, accounts for 8% of global emissions. But what if building materials could provide a climate solution? Pebble are one of a handful of companies working to make that a reality, and they've just switched on this pilot plant in the Netherlands to produce an alternative material.
So how you can use our material is to substitute a certain part of that cement. We take CO2 emissions that has been captured, we turn them into a solid permanent material that keeps the CO2 locked in practically forever, and at the same time we're manufacturing materials that don't make our environmental problem worse.
So this is the machine that does the job. Yes. What is actually going on here?
So what you see is a machine that takes crushed rock, we mix it with water, and then we put it into this reactor, and we mix it with CO2. That CO2 then chemically bonds with the crushed rock and then turns into a product that can be used to replace cement.
Unlocking this natural process into something that can be done at speed and scale is the goal for researchers here. The main ingredient in their process is a mineral called olivine.
The way traditional cement is made is that you take this mine product and you add a lot of heat to it. You warm this up to 1400 degrees C, and in the process what you end up with is cement. But in that process you lose half of the mass. You've generated a lot of CO2. For every ton of cement that you produce about 900 kilograms of CO2. What our process does is it takes a different mineral, but the same amount, but instead of emitting CO2, what we do is we take the CO2 and we bond it into this mineral, and what you end up with is a product that actually, you end up with more of it than what you started off with.
With the CO2 locked away, the product can now be deployed by blending it with existing ingredients. That reduces the cement needed by 25%. In Rotterdam, there are already projects starting to use pebble in the construction of precast panels.
There must be a lot of nervousness in industry about using a new material. Concrete has been used for hundreds of years and has, stood up to testing in the real world. How can you convince people that this is actually going to work?
Yeah, so first of all, the nervousness is there for a good reason. Anything you build with concrete cannot break down. It's the bridges we drive on, it's the buildings we live in. You start with the lowest risk applications within concrete. We're not going to be building the structural pillars of a high-rise as the first thing. We're going to be going into non-structural concrete, which is what we're doing right now, at first, so that we can reduce the risk, we can actually deploy the material into the real world at meaningful scales and see how it behaves.
As the world keeps building, there is a race on to develop more environmentally friendly materials, and that means lots of startups are crowding into this space. Who comes out on top will be those who can prove they can make this cost-effective at scale.
The BBC was always on in the Mashiri house, and my dream actually was to be a BBC News presenter. I want to be for others what the BBC was for us, a trusted source of stability and hope. For me, trust is about presence, about fostering relationships all around the world over years. So when a story breaks, we're not chasing a lead, we're already there. I'm Marianne Mashiri on The World Today for BBC News.
Live from London, this is BBC News. The government braces itself for more legal challenges from councils in England that are looking to stop hotels being used to house asylum seekers.
There needs to be a solution to this problem. This problem isn't going to be eased in any way. It's only going to get worse. So the government really do need to start having those serious conversations about protecting our borders.
We will be live with our correspondents in Essex and also in Westminster to discuss what happens next. Israel calls up around 60,000 military reservists ahead of a planned ground offensive to seize all of Gaza City. I'll be speaking to IDF reservist who says he will refuse to fight in the current conflict in Gaza if he's called up. As Russia continues its attack on Ukraine, the highest-ranking US military officer is about to meet European military chiefs at the Pentagon to discuss security guarantees if a peace deal is reached. A former priest who led an evangelical movement in Sheffield in the 1980s and 90s has been found guilty of 17 counts of indecent assault. And we find out how AI recreated a woman's original Cockney accent after she lost her voice to a disease 25 years ago. Welcome to Verified Live. How to accommodate asylum seekers and deal with questions and concerns of local communities are issues being grappled with in many parts of the world. Well, some councils in England say they're poised to take legal action to remove asylum seekers from hotels in their communities. It all comes after the High Court granted a district council a temporary injunction yesterday to block asylum seekers from lodging at the Bell Hotel in Essex. Our political correspondent Joe Pike has the story.
Could Epping act as an inspiration, with more councils using the courts to close asylum hotels? Some opposition parties seem keen to encourage it.
All of our councils, as we speak, are studying, their legal teams are studying the transcript from this case and the precedent that it set. Our message is this, as Nigel said this morning, if you have a hotel, a migrant hotel near you, and you are concerned about safety, go and make your voices heard, peacefully protest. I want to emphasise and underscore peacefully protest. It clearly was a decisive factor with regards to this case.
But your councils don't all have planning and housing powers,
Not all of them, but some of them do. Durham does, West Northamptonshire does.
Yesterday's court judgment has prompted a whole host of headaches here at the Home Office. There is now the prospect of further protests, which could put pressure on the police, more legal challenges, which could be very expensive for the government. Then there is the more immediate challenge of where to house what we think are 140 people who are currently living at the Bell Hotel in Epping.
We're looking at contingency options for where those people can be accommodated, but we've never thought that hotels were a long-term sustainable solution for accommodating asylum seekers. That's why the government made a very clear commitment that we're going to reduce to zero the number of hotels that are being used to accommodate asylum seekers.
The Conservatives want the government to make a commitment about where they house the Epping hotel migrants.
The illegal immigrants moved out of Epping should not be put into hotels, apartments or HMOs, and I'm calling today on the government to commit that that won't happen. There are alternatives available. The real solution is to deport all illegal immigrants upon arrival, and I'm calling on the government to hold an emergency cabinet meeting right now, just like they did over recognising Palestine a few weeks ago, to fix this crisis and put plans in place to deport all illegal immigrants as soon as they arrive.
Keir Starmer's commitment to smash the gangs and stop small boat arrivals does not yet seem to be paying off. And now the government has yet another hurdle to clear in its efforts to fix the immigration system. Joe Pike, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, joining me live now is Simon Dedman, who's there in Epping for us, and also our political correspondent Alicia McCarthy at Westminster. But Simon, to you first of all, it is just over 24 hours since we had that injunction. You've been there throughout the course of today. What have people been saying to you?
Well, Matthew, this is an issue that really has divided this small town at the end of the London Underground in Essex. There are a lot of people who welcome the injunction, who are concerned about the safety of their children and grandchildren having this asylum hotel on their doorstep, effectively, is how they feel about it, even though it is on the edge of the town. But there are also a lot of other people who frankly don't like seeing me here. They think that the attention that Epping is getting is a stain on the community, and they don't like the protests, some of which over the past month and a half have been violent. There has been disorder, and there have been 28 arrests, and some residents complain of hearing helicopters at night, police helicopters flying over above. Of course, these protests were started because of allegations about an asylum seeker who is alleged to have committed sexual assault towards a teenage girl. Accusations they deny. They have been remanded in custody awaiting court proceedings. But this afternoon I've been speaking to people here in Epping, getting their opinion on their local council getting this injunction to temporarily end the use of the Bell Hotel for asylum seekers.
Personally, I think it's great news, and I hope it starts a ball rolling for a great unravelling of the situation we've got at the moment, where there seems to be a huge deluge of asylum seekers over here. You know, I can see their plight, I can see why there's the problem, but it just seems to be growing and growing and growing. It's getting hugely expensive. The taxpayers having to foot the bill.
I have a mixed reaction to it, because I think it's a good thing that the hotel's closing, because the attention that it's gotten recently has been negative for the town. I'm not a fan of the protests at all. I think it's not a full solution to the larger issue at hand, and I also think that in a way it kind of feels like certain people won, when I don't really feel like I want to reward people for their actions.
Simon, just a few voices there, but are you hearing anything wider about when those asylum seekers will actually be moved from that hotel now and where they go?
Well, that is now in the Home Office's hands. They have until 4 p.m. on the 12th of September to move them. I have in the last hour spoken to an asylum seeker who's staying at the Bell Hotel who says they haven't been given any details, but they actually say that they support ending the use of hotels. They said they would much rather be staying in dispersal accommodation, and they told me that they and other asylum seekers at the hotel, they've got nothing to do. They would like a situation where they could actually work. Now, that is something that isn't possible for this individual and others there at the moment, but one would presume that the Home Office is going to be having to look at other hotels, dispersal accommodation, possibly elsewhere in Essex, the military base of Wethersfield, where the government has been able now to increase numbers from 800 to 1,245. And the numbers there, we understand, are increasing by around 50 a week. The Home Office also has, of course, the headache of other councils who now may end up being inspired by the legal action that Epping Forest District Council has made. Neighbouring Broxbourne Council is considering taking legal action with a hotel that is in its patch.
Simon, thanks very much, and we'll hear from their leader a little later in our programme. Let's head to Westminster and to Alicia. And Alicia McCarthy, this is a real problem for the government with, at the moment, as we're talking, more questions than answers.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the immediate problem, as so eloquently outlined there by Simon, is the fact they've got to find a new place to accommodate the 140 or so people who are in Epping. But that's just the immediate problem. The bigger picture, the bigger problem is what happens if other councils decide to challenge the hotels in their area. And that could be really very significant. So the government will be looking at this closely. What we've heard from ministers so far is that they were looking at contingency options for those particular people who are being housed in Epping, but that of course is only temporary, and that's not going to be easy to find. We've heard from opposition parties who've come up with their own solutions to this. So the Conservatives are saying the answer is to deport people immediately that they arrive, and as to the people in Epping, they're suggesting that perhaps they go to former military bases or that they go to other things like barges. You'll remember the Bibi Stockholm that the Conservative government had going for a few weeks there. Now, they're saying that those are the options that the government should consider, and that it shouldn't be dispersing people to other hotels or to flats or accommodation basically that could be used by other local people. Reform for their part are saying, well, you know, really we want more people to go out and protest because we think that was key in getting this decision made. And they're also saying that they think that there ought to be more challenges to this. And some of their councils, now it gets a bit complicated because not all councils have control of housing and planning, but it's saying that its councils where they do have that control are going to be looking at launching challenges like this one.
Lisa McCarthy live there at Westminster. Thanks very much. Head to the website for the very latest on that story. Let's turn to the war in Ukraine though now, because NATO military chiefs have been meeting to work on security guarantees for Ukraine in the event of a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. And in the past few minutes, the chair of the NATO military committee has posted on X, writing that it was a great candid discussion among NATO chiefs of defence and insisting that the priority continues to be a just, credible and durable peace. And further talks hosted by the Pentagon are due to start very shortly. So let's cross to Washington and speak to Vitaly Shevchenko, Russia editor at BBC Monitoring. And Vitaly, some really basic questions that those military chiefs have to thrash out over the coming weeks, because the role, the rules of engagement, the size of the force, the type of air cover, just a few of the obvious questions now having to be discussed.
And also whether Russia is going to agree to anything decided by NATO or in the discussions later today in Washington. That's a big question, Matthew. We still don't really know the details of discussions at the summit in Washington on Monday or on last Friday in Alaska. Security guarantees were one of the main issues discussed, but what exactly that entailed, we don't know. The tweet we just saw from Admiral Dragone, well, it's another voice saying that they've had a great discussion, but it's far from certain what it entails. And as for Russia, its stance has not changed at all. The Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has said that Russia must be involved in discussions of any guarantees that will be provided to Ukraine. Russia is still saying that it categorically rejects the deployment of NATO troops to Ukraine under any banner as part of any sort of mission. So Russia's position unchanged. NATO is trying to thrash out the details of what they're prepared to do. The question is, will these decisions by Ukraine's Western allies, will they be strong enough to stop Vladimir Putin or even change his position on Ukraine? Because that has not happened after all these discussions, including